I memorized Pandit Nehru's Tryst with Destiny speech when I was a child. But we missed our tryst with destiny. There are 300 million people in India who will never read the newspaper that they deliver, sit in the car that they clean, or send their kids to the school that they help build. Poverty is about productivity, and productivity is about the infrastructure of opportunity. And India is poor because we are inadequately formalized, we are inadequately financialized, we're inadequately urbanized, we're inadequately industrialized, and we're inadequately skilled. I have 150 guys in regulatory affairs whose full-time job is taking care of the regulatory cholesterol. I had 392 inspections last year. Why? Because the employer compliance universe in India is 57,000 compliances a year, 3,100 filings, and this changes 8 times a day. Now, every time I tell this to people at Niti Aayog who champion EODB, they say you're making this number up. Now, how do you expect an MSME or a small entrepreneur to handle this? And most importantly, out of the 57,000 compliances, 8,000 of them prescribe jail. And not only jail, in India, you get 5 years for disrobing a woman. You also get 5 years for some compliances defaults. I mean, that just is an unfair equivalence, right? And so the notion that when you make a law for corporate India, it's about Reliance, HDFC, Tata's, or Infosys is really choking our small entrepreneurs. So rationalization, decriminalization, and digitization of our regulatory cholesterol is absolutely the only way we will reach our aspirations. Our school system, and 45% of our kids are in government schools. I think, first of all, that's numerically embarrassing because only 7% of Japanese are in private schools. Only 14% of Americans are in private schools. But many people can't afford private schools. So we need to fix government schools because you can't teach somebody in 3 months or 3 years what they should have learned in 12 years. So, and we have to stop believing we will fix government schools by throwing more money at the problem. In the last 20 years, government school reform has involved teacher salaries, teacher qualifications, and smaller class sizes. And it has not improved learning outcomes because we left out the 2 political economy controversial questions in government schools of performance management and governance. We need to reduce the regulatory arbitrage and government interference for private schools, and we desperately need to focus government energies not on screwing private schools, but on fixing public ones. So people are not getting a return on investment in higher education as much as we think. And I think it's important for us in India to think about how to finance our skill system, our school system, and our university system very differently. We might want to uncouple the regulator, service provider, and policymaker and unpack who finances, who delivers, and who sort of evaluates. And there are 5 things we need to do in that. One is we need more competition. India only had 89 banks in 1924. In 1947, we had 94 banks. Even today, we only have 94 banks. We need 100, 150. Now, it's hard to get to those numbers, but that's not an argument against getting to those numbers. The second is we need better governance in public sector banks. The shareholder is so powerful that the boards and the management are weak in public sector banks. We need better governance in private sector banks. There the CEO is so powerful that the board and the shareholders are weak. It's a sort of opposite problem of public sector banks. And then we obviously need RBI to raise its game in regulation and supervision, and we need to stop treating non-banks as stepchildren. But I think if we issue more licenses, if we fix public and private governance, if we basically raise our game in regulation and supervision, we need more financialization. Anybody who knows labor reform knows that you can't comply with 100% of India's labor laws without violating 10% of them. It's just a reality. I mean, there are 25,000 different laws. There are 17 definitions of wages. There are 22 definitions of workers. There are 19 definitions of enterprises. And it just makes no sense. And our labor laws actually are hurting us more than they are helping us. And they are not helping the informal sector. I mean, even if anything, COVID has demonstrated that 90% of Indian labor force does not have any protection, does not have social security, and 10% is an elite who uses the government to sort of violate the contract between employers and employees. Civil service reform is so overdue in India. You know, we have 57 ministries in India. Japan only has 9, US has 14, UK only has 22. We really need some performance management. We need maybe the colonel threshold of the army where you retire at 50 if you're not shortlisted for promotion. And we do not have 98% of our people ranked outstanding. And we think a little more broadly about lateral entry. We think about forced curves. We think about better training. There are specific solutions to civil service reform which are short than saying abolish the IAS, which is not helpful. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that should be our opening gambit. And it's important to recognize what China has done. Deng Xiaoping was very skilled, but he did not do what he did because of communism. It was leadership, it was ambition, it was courage. And I remember in our IPO roadshow 3 years ago, there was a particularly difficult investor beating me up saying, right now, the Indian economy is the same size that the Chinese economy was 10 years ago. And at that size, they were growing at 13%, and you are growing at 7%. What do you have to say for yourself? I said, so there we quantified it. 6% is the fixed cost of democracy. I was being glib. That's not true. I think India will be consistently warm rather than hot or cold. Maybe those are the fixed costs of democracy. But I think we've made the down payment on those fixed costs of democracy. And I think it's time for all of us. I don't particularly like Karl Marx, but one quote of his, which I use a lot, is he used to say, philosophers have described the world in thousands of ways. The point, however, is to change it. We created a license Raj where our capital became handicapped without labor and our labor became handicapped without capital. And the symptoms of that are sort of our opening balance today. And so I would submit it took 72 years for India to cross the GDP of England, which has 66 million people, and 1.3 billion people took 72 years to do that, not because of any cultural reason, but because of an economic gamble which went wrong. Now, so much in India has gone right. We made a political gamble which has gone right, but the economic gamble went wrong, and we have been fixing that since 1991. There's obviously the gap between India's reality and our aspiration is not a lie. It is a disappointment. Dumbledore tells Harry Potter in Chamber of Secrets, it is our choices more than our abilities that reveal what we really are. I would submit that India has made a new tryst with destiny, and I'm quite optimistic because one of the choices India is making is we recognize that wages matter more than jobs. Our problem is not unemployment, it is productivity. Because I have always believed that equality of opportunity depends on the infrastructure of opportunity. And the infrastructure of opportunity is not roads, power, and telecom. It is that, of course. But it is the 3 E's of education, employment, and employability.